In Inferno, you are bringing souls through the circles of hell. And you will do this by placing out your family members into Florence. These family members will accuse sinners, and these sinners will go to hell. Now, in hell, it's your job to move these little sinners around and get them to their circle of hell. When you do this, well, you will score. But you can of course also score in different ways of this game. This here that I have in front of me is a prototype. So some things might change. But it is a well-made prototype and it is quite beautiful. In this video I am going to show you how to play Inferno. So let's just take a look at this. The first thing we need to do is to place out the board in the middle of the table for all players to easy reach. In the top right corner of the board you can see which side is for which player count. This up here is the city of Florence, and here we have some squares marked out. On these squares we need to at random place out 8 locations. The small ones we see in the center are the common locations. The bigger ones here with a curve are special locations, but I will tell you more about that in a bit. The next thing we need to place out is visitors, looking like this. And we need to place 1 visitor of each type per player in the palace location. This means that each player should put out 4 visitors in different colors on this location here. Next we need to create a supply of souls, florins, drachmas, and half diplomats. We need to place out Mr. Dante on the space where it says how many players you are. This is a 3-player game, so Dante would start here. In a 3-player game we also need to put out one of these shortcuts here on the road that Dante walks. We will put this up on the 3rd stop going from the bottom up, meaning on this one here. On the river we need to put out 8 of these little cubes, and we will put them on the same spot as there is already a cube marked out. Next we need to choose some guardians, and we need to choose 1 black and 1 red. We will choose these guardians at random, and these are the guardians of hell. Once we have drawn 2 random, we put them face up near the board. If this is your first game, Medusa and minus is recommended. And we also need to put their guardian figures out on the hell squares. And we can see where they start in hell by looking at the sides. If we start by looking at Medusa's card, we can see that she starts on the far left on the yellow shield track, placing her there. While Minos here starts on the far right on the purple shield track, placing him here. Just be aware because some of these guardians have their own specific tokens as well. Medusa in this case have these frozen figures, while Minos has the ropes. Next we need to take a player board. We need to take 4 level of the houses that we will build, but also components of the player colors we have chosen. We take these little round ones, the skulls, and the 70 score flames. We then need to take the family cards, looking like this, and shuffle them real good. Then we deal out 1 card to each player. The rest of the cards that was not used in this game goes back into the box. Now the players need to look at this card to see what their starting supply will be. In this case here you get 1 florin, you get 2 fraud cards, you get 4 nobles at home, you get 1 noble at the tower, and 2 drachmas. This up here is the sin track and is placed at the bottom of the board. At the start of the game, each player gets to do an advancements in 1 or 2 sin markers. And we need to look at our family cards to see what advancement should be made by the person sitting next to you. In the top left corner of these family cards, we can see a color and an error. This means that the person to your left should put their skull on the blue track. In this case, the white player. If we look on the second player's cards, meaning the white player, the person to their left should put their skull on the gray spot, meaning this one here. Now we need to move on to the next player, meaning the purple player. The player to their left, meaning this player over here, needs to put their skull on the red space, meaning this one up here. If this would have been a 4-player game, the other symbols in the right corner of your card would indicate which marker the person to your right should advance on. We need to take our little boats and put them at the top starting position of the lone track. And then also take our scoring markers and put it at the top of the infamy track. This here is the score track. We need to create a face-up deck of plague cards. What we see here are souls, meaning that we should start to fill up the cemetery with the souls indicated on this card. This gray space here is the market, and we now need to put 1 resource per player in the market. And lastly, we need to take the remaining fraud cards and put out 3 faced up, creating a market. And that, my friend, was the setup of the board and the player areas. And now we are ready to start playing the game. This game is about you bringing souls through the circles of hell. Each of these colored circles represent a step in hell. And you need to get the souls to their destination. When you get the little soul to their destination, meaning a color matching that soul, you get to lay that little soul down. And then you will get the matching infamy points that matches that track. These infamy points is the victory points of this game. And when Dante here reaches his final destination on the little track, the game ends and the player that has the most infamy points wins. This game is played out during 2 different phases, and the first phase is where we get to move the souls through hell. During the hell phase, you have 2 choices. You can choose to either bring a soul into hell from the graveyard, letting them pass the river, but also having to pay drachmas. Or you can choose to move any soul in hell through the different circles. If you do this, the soul of course needs to be standing up, because if they are laying down, it means that they have already reached their circle where they're supposed to be. Like in this case here, the purple soul have reached the purple circle, and now they are laying down because, well, they have reached their destination. If you, for example, can't move any souls in the circles of hell because they have already reached their destination, you would need to bring a soul into hell from the graveyard. But then you would also need to pay 1 drachmas. If you already have 1 drachmas, well, you simply pay 1 drachmas to the supply, and then you move a soul into one of the available spots in the first circle. But if you do not have any drachmas, you would need to take a loan. So whenever you need to take a loan, you would need to move your ship with your player color 1 step on the loan track. This would give you 2 drachmas. But if you ever need to pass one of these lightning symbols here, you would also need to pay 5 infamy points. Whenever you reach the last step and need to take a new loan, you simply go back and forward here, having to pay 5 infamy points per loan. So when you move a soul from the graveyard, you pay 1 drachma and then you place the soul in one of the available spots in the first circle. But if there is a soul standing up available in hell, you can choose to move that soul instead. To move a soul, you always need to move it downwards, meaning that you can't move from side to side. In hell, you can see that there are these chains. This is basically the movement pattern that you can do. This means that one player could choose to move the blue soul 1 step down into the second circle. But if there is a soul in the circle that they are passing through, they could choose to move through that soul, getting them one circle further down. Remember, your objective is to get the soul to the matching circle of the soul's color. In Hell, we also have something that is called the Wall of Dis. To be able to move through this wall, you need to have bought a pass. And the pass that you use needs to be the same color as your player color, meaning that you cannot use another player's pass to pass through this. So in this case here, the white player wants to bring the red soul all the way down to the red circle. And they could do that, taking the red soul and passing through the blue soul, then passing through the yellow soul, and eventually ending up in the red circle. When the soul has reached a circle that matches its color, we lay that soul down. But if another player than the white player would like to move the yellow soul down to the yellow circle, well, they would not be able to do so, as they have not paid the Dis wall. So in this case here, this player would only be able to move one step to the first free shield in the blue level. To be able to place a pass and get through the Wall of Dis, you would need to do that in a location in Florence, but I will show you that in a bit. If you ever end up in a rare situation where you just cannot move a soul out on the board because, well, maybe all the spots are taken, or you have not a pass to move through the Wall of Dis, well, the game would actually end now. Even if a player on future turns would be able to move a soul, it will end during your turn, because a soul needs to be moved through Hell, otherwise the game ends. But this is how you move souls out on the board. You can move one step to the first free shield, or you can move through souls. And you can move through several souls, but that was the first phase of your turn. The second phase is the Florence phase. So now we're going to town. During the Florence phase, you need to take a family member from your home, not your tower, and then you bring that family member into Florence. But there is a link between the place that you have just put a soul in Hell and where you can put your family members in Florence. Because on these shields you can see a bunch of symbols. These symbols corresponds with the symbols up in Florence. This means that if you ended your soul's movement on a goat symbol, you need to take one of the two available actions in that district. But if you would have ended your movement on the key symbol, for example, you would have needed to take any of those actions in that district instead. So in this case here, you ended up on the goat symbol, meaning that you could either choose to go to the market or to the banquet. Now, the market here is a special location, remember? The ones that have this little curve up here and are slightly bigger than the common locations that are just a square. To be able to enter the special locations, you need to pay whatever says in the top left corner. In this case here, you would need to bring a rascal to be able to go to the market. But the common spaces here have no requirements. So here you can simply bring a family member. But now, what do these different locations give you? Well, let me show you that. If we start by looking at the banquet, we can watch the symbol in the bottom of the token, which pretty much explains itself. Here you get to place one new level on your tower. In ascending order, of course. Meaning that if you have 2 levels already, you now get to place a third. But in the market, you get to take, meaning that you steal, one of the available, and then you put it in an empty space in your tower. These resources are later used to unlock benefits on the different fraud cards. On these fraud cards, we have 2 different sides. One where you get the benefits immediately, and the second one where you will get end of game scoring. To play these fraud cards, you need to go to the wall, because here you can do up to 3 actions. You can choose to give 2 florins to get 2 drachmas, and move a resource from your tower to the matching space on the supply panel to instantly get the corresponding reward. And you can pay 2 drachmas to be able to play a fraud card. But how do you play a fraud card? Now when you play the cards, we can see that there are 2 different sides on this card. As I said before, this is the effect that you will get immediately. And you can choose if you want the one on the top or the one on the bottom. But you need to have the goods that are displayed in the bottom to be able to get this benefit. Either in the supply up here or in the tower. Once you have received these benefits, you have used this side of the card. And now you need to slide it in under the board. Only having this side here visible. Now this is what you will receive in the end of game as a benefit. And again, you can choose 2 effects. And just like before, you would need to have whatever goods stated at the bottom in either your supply or in your tower to be able to get those effects. To see the different benefits, simply look at the back of the player aid to get an overview. If you go to the bank, you will receive 2 Florence. But you will also receive 1 florin for each guest that you have in your tower. If you go to the haystack, well, you get to have a good time and you get to place a rascal from your reserve next to the family member that you have just brought in. At the palace, you get to take a guest and place them in an empty space in your tower. And you will earn as many florins as there is height of the floor on which you host them. If you go to the country yard, you can move family members from your tower to your home. And you can transfer up to 2 family members from the tower into your home. But you can also choose to reorganize the tower if you want to, but also the goods. And lastly, we have the bonfire. Again, here you have 3 optional actions. You can choose to pay 3 florins to get 3 drachmas. Or you could choose to place one of your discs at the gate of the wall of dish. Remember, this is the one that will let you pass souls through the 6th circle of hell. Or you could choose to move your score token 1 space to the right. Lastly, you can choose to pay 1 drachma and play a guardian. Or you could choose to pay 2 drachmas and play the Styx River. Now, how would we do this? Now, let's look at playing a guardian first. To know how you play these guardians and what they do, you need to look in the right side of their card. Here we can see what this guardian will do out on the board. Medusa here, for example, will move the standee to an empty shield. And then you need to choose 1 soul from an adjacent shield and remove it. And then you need to place 1 of these tokens instead. This here is a petrified soul that now is stone because, well, they have looked her in the eyes. All of these guardians of course have different things that they will do when you play them, but you can get an easy overview of what they do in the rulebook. When you get to play the River Styx, you get to take souls of the same color from the graveyard and then return them to the reserve. But then you would also get to advance on the sin track. And how much you get to advance depends on how many souls of the same color you take. If you remove 1 soul, you can move your skull 1 step on the positions 2 to 5. But if you remove 2 souls of the same color, you can move your skull 1 position in one of the sin tracks from 6 to 9. But if you remove 3 souls of the same color, you can move your skull 1 position of one of the sin tracks from 2 to 5, but also 1 skull in the positions 6 to 9. That was the first step of phase number 2. To simply put one of your family members out in either one of the special locations, paying whatever it says in the top left corner, and then doing the actions, or simply going to one of the common locations instead. The second step of the Florence phase would be to accuse a sinner. But just how do you accuse a sinner, and what does actually happen when you do so? Well, let's take a look at that. The first thing we need to do in this step is to remove all of your family members from Florence. This family member here that has just been in Florence needs to go to the tower. This family member is the one that have accused a sinner. If they accused in a special location, you should place the family member on the floor where the guest of that color is placed. Because there are some requirements to be able to accuse. If you accuse in a common location, you just need to have an empty spot in your tower to be able to put in the accuser. But if you do it in a special location, you need to have a guest in your tower of the same color as the location where you wish to accuse. There must be a free space for the accuser at the same floor as the guest. If you would have had any more family members in Florence, these would now go to your home location. Now we need to take one soul matching the color of the location where we did the accusation and put that soul in the graveyard. And now you get to advance on the sin track. In this case here, we put in a blue soul in the graveyard, meaning that we actually get to put out a skull on the first spot on the blue track. If we already had a skull on the blue track, we would simply advance it one step instead. Once we get up to number 4 here, we get a half diploma. If we get all the way up here, we simply keep our skull at this level. And then you get whatever infamy points it says on the last step. Once you have moved your skull on the track, you can also claim the bonuses that are next to the track that you have just moved on. The last step here would be to move Dante one step through his journey of hell. At the first steps you will not get any bonuses, but when he eventually enters hell, you will get whatever bonus stated to the left of the step that he is at the moment. As you can see, there are quite a few different rewards here. Here you get to play a guardian, but also put a beige soul into the graveyard. This one here is optional and will let you play a fraud card if you want to. But the ones with the diplomas here are a little bit different. Let's look at what happens if Dante stands next to the purple diploma. The player with their skull highest on the sin track that Dante is standing next to gets to place their disc in that diploma area. There may be several different disc colors in these areas. At the end of the game, each circle will award points, but only among those who have their diploma here. When Dante eventually reaches the last level, the player will also get 2 infamy points, plus the game will now end. At some point of the game, you might need to hold a family council. Now, this is nothing that you want to do, but sometimes you just have to, because you might not have any family members left to send into Florence. So after you have completed your hell phase, well, you would need to lose 2 infamy points. And then either take one of your family members that you have in your towers and place in your home. But if you do not have any family members in your tower either, you would need to return a guest from your tower into the palace. Or you would need to remove one of your resources and put back into the market. So now Dante have reached his destination and the game is over. Now it's time for us to see who have won, and we need to calculate some infamy points. In reverse order, starting from the player who took the last turn to the one who moved Dante to his final stop, we need to first check the different fraud cards. And now we would get any of the benefits stating on these cards. Either the one on the top or the one on the bottom. But remember that we need to have the corresponding resources to be able to get that bonus. And now we need to adjust the river score. We need to move these cubes one step back for each empty space out on the corresponding circle of this error. Meaning that if there were 2 empty shields on the purple track, this cube would move back 2 steps. Now lowering the score of that cube. And we will do that for all of these cubes. For every 2 half certificates that you have, you get to claim a new one out that you do not already have. So if the brown player, for example, has 2 half certificates, they could now choose to put their little circle on the purple certificate. And now we also get to score from these diplomas. So in this example here, the white player would score 15 points for this diploma, because 5 times 3 equals 15. Now we will need to do that from the top going down. And now each player will lose end of game scores depending on where their boat is on the lone track. We can see that in the far left, meaning that the brown player here would lose 4 points, the white 2 and the purple 4. And lastly, there are some prestige points. If you have the highest tower, you would get 3 points. If you have the most number of guests, you would get 3 points. If you have the highest number of Florence, you would get 2 points. If you have the highest number of family members in your home, you would get 2 extra points. And that, my friend, is how you play Inferno. This is a beautiful, well-made game. I really enjoyed this. I like the different components. I like how you move the little souls around here out on the table. I like how you can play the cards, how you can do the different actions in Florence. But you also need to plan ahead on which soul you would like to move to which spot, so you can actually do the corresponding actions up in Florence, because remember, you need to put these together as they are linked. You get the little towers that you can build, you have the family members that you need to manage, the money, the resources. This game is really well made. And if you are into resource management, planning ahead, strategic games, well, this one is just for you. Now, as I said at the start of the video, this is just a prototype, so some things might change, but the artwork and everything that I have here in front of me is really well made and quite beautiful. Yes, there is a few symbols here, but the game is actually quite streamlined, so there's never really a question on what you can do on the different locations as long as you start to learn the symbols, which you will do within 1 or 2 turns. You will understand what you can do in the different locations, how you can score, and this is where this game really becomes heavy. It is where you plan ahead. Try to manage everything that you have going on and try to get the most score in the end of the game. And that, my friend, was Inferno, a strategic middle heavyweight Euro game. I would put this on 3, maybe 3.5 on the heavyweight scale. It is quite easy to learn, but there is a lot to keep track on. You need to plan ahead. You need to know what you want to do in the future turns. This game is brilliant and it will be out on Kickstarter quite soon. And now you know how to play it. If you like the game, well, check out the links down in the description. If you like the video, why not subscribe to the channel or give me a little thumbs up? Or write to me in the comments and I will answer back. But that was the video for this week, my friend, and until next time, please do not forget to keep on spreading that board gaming love I know you all have. Peace out, my friend.